Tonight, growing scrutiny on Target after the retail chain announced that it is pulling some products that celebrate Pride Month. And the reason is that there are concerns over employee safety. The company told the Wall Street Journal that over the past decade of selling Pride products around the month of June, it has always received some criticism, but it's taken a more aggressive turn this year. Quote, people have confronted workers in stores, knocked down Pride merchandise displays, and put threatening posts on social media with videos from inside of the stores. Target has not specified what products it will be removing, but many right-wing activists have focused their criticism on a transgender-friendly swimsuit that online commentators incorrectly believed was being marketed to children. The company now joins a growing list of big brands and companies like Walt Disney, Bud Light, and North Face caught up in these partisan culture wars. And my panel is back with me. Target is saying that they're doing this because it's a safety situation. And I think I'm sympathetic to that. I mean, these are real people who work in these stores, and they didn't sign up to work at a Target to get caught up in the culture wars. But LGBTQ activists say that this is a critical moment and that the store is backing down. Here's a comment from Sarah Kate Ellis, the president and CEO of GLAAD. She says, anti-LGBTQ violence and hate should not be winning in America, but it will continue until corporate leaders step up as the heroes for their LGBTQ employees and consumers and do not cave to fringe activists calling for censorship. What do you say?
I think that she's right. You can't let the haters win this kind of thing. They also represent a minority, a very smaller minority of American public. Target has 1,900 stores across America. And if you go back and you look at their marketing and research, their average user is a 35 to 44-year-old white suburban mom who makes $80,000 a year, has some college, maybe even a college four-year degree. 70% of Americans support marriage equality. Those Americans tend to align with Democrats, tend to align with more progressive causes. So for them to take this position, I think they don't understand their market, and they're going to pay a cost on the other side, because particularly with a lot of voters now, they're looking at companies and their social policies, not just where they stand on what products they have. This is going to be a problem for Target on the other side of the ledger as well.
Jason, can I ask you about this? Because, I don't think you can really separate this from the broader conversation that we're having about what culture war really means, but we're really talking about human beings here. Mm-hmm. People who are LGBTQ, people, they live in this country over the last couple of decades, have fought for basic rights. And you have a lot of activists on the right basically saying that the idea here, according to one who tweeted today, is to make pride toxic for brands, to make cultural acceptance for LGBTQ people unacceptable. Is that where this is headed on the right?
Well, I certainly don't speak for the right on this kind of thing. My view of it is, if we're going to be, over the last 5-10 years as Republicans, we've witnessed, this effort to cancel some of our views, right? And been pretty successful, people losing their jobs, companies going under. I think it's a mistake for us to then turn around and then try and do the same to the other side, right? And I think what's happening here is that there was, with the Bud Light situation, is that was successful, but I think it was successful in a vacuum because Bud Light, their target market are folks that are not necessarily aligned with a Dylan Mulvaney, et cetera. On Target, the people that are going in a Target, to your point, on the marketing side of things, I can't imagine that any of those folks cared what was on display there. And as I understand it, Target has had this display for a number of years, and it really was, I think, just the bathing suit aspect of it. And, and that's, I think, a different story in a sense, but I do think it was a mistake for Target to come back like this, because here's what I would do if I'm on the right and I'm arguing this, which I think this whole thing is ridiculous to begin with, but I would say you're concerned about employee safety here, but what about the stores where folks are coming in and shoplifting and grabbing baskets full of clothes and product and everything else and leaving, and you're not doing anything about it, but you're concerned about employee safety in this case? There's a number of things. You're kicking the can down the road with another argument that just continues this story out there, which I think is ridiculous.
There is this independent analysis done by the research group that shows that right-wing demonstrators have increasingly mobilized over the last year. I don't think we even need a bar graph to know that that's happened. Incidentally, I think Ron DeSantis would claim credit for some of this too, right? You spent some time digging really deep into the kind of origin story of this push against LGBTQ individuals, which has been really centered around trans people, but is not just about trans people.
Yeah, and I think there's also a larger story about the divorce between the Republican Party and the business community. You know, a lot of these companies feel like they're caught in the middle and they would just like to serve their customers and not get involved in politics. But increasingly, they do have to choose sides. There is not a middle ground. It is either, either you're sort of with them or against them. And the pressure is coming from customers, it's coming from employees to take sides in some of these important issues that are about, for a lot of people, basic human rights. And that means that the companies are sort of in this no-win situation where, I think from the point of view of the right, to Jason's point, there is a feeling like they have been the victims of this culture war coming from the dominant culture, coming from corporations, coming from all of the institutions outside of government. And so you've seen, politicians like Ron DeSantis, a lot of activists, whether it's on Twitter or elsewhere, saying they want to go on offense and take on these corporations that have, in their view, gone woke. And so it leads to this situation where everybody is picking sides and where companies have become alienated from the sort of traditional party of capital because Republicans are the ones saying, if you're, Disney and you want to promote gay rights in your movies or on your campuses, they're going to protest.
I mean, look, these are businesses. They are concerned about their employees and their customers. And if you're Disney, you're doing these things because your employees and your customers are in a place of acceptance when it comes to LGBTQ people. So it's really a question of whether they can turn back the clock on all of that. Molly, Jason, and Jamal, thank you all very much for joining us tonight.